Hello and welcome back to another episode of our Gospel Love podcast. I am Caitlin.
I am Aramis.
And I am Coach D.
And today we are going to be recapping.
Why I feel like she whispering?
It does sound like you're talking a little low.
Am I?
A little bit.
Okay.
It's okay.
All right.
You gotta whisper.
I mean, as long as the mic gets it, I know. Okay, well, I'm just making sure that it's adjusted to.
Okay. I thought maybe you wanted to start over or something.
So you want me to start over?
No, I don't. I want you to keep going. I want to keep all this in the podcast.
Today we are going to be recapping our Gospel Love event that we finally had.
Yeah. Dinner and dialogue.
Yeah, that was a good name. Who thought that up?
Who thought that up? Leon. You know who thought that up. Leon got to do everything.
That was good. I'll give you your props there.
Yeah,
dinner and dialogue.
Dinner and dialogue. Yeah, dinner and dialogue is where we have dinner. We had a dialogue and we talked about the communication part. But yeah, I thought it was a great event. Everybody else thought it was a great event. We sent out the thank you text the other day, and I got everybody responding from voicemails to hearts to can't wait to the next one. So
right.
It's something that we're going to grow, we're going to build, and eventually, be able to take the show on the road. So
yeah, this was like our local let's get back into it event. So I think it was a great turnout, and I think everybody really enjoyed themselves. Did you enjoy yourself?
Yeah, I had a good time. I mean, you and I were, working. I had a good time. I enjoyed it. I think, seeing the way that everybody else had an opportunity to enjoy it, but also still, like, I like what you pointed out before when we were talking about it. It was a group engagement, but there was still plenty of space for the intimate moments. You know what I mean? Sharing a meal, being able to just talk, between husband and wife.
And we ain't gonna give away our secrets and how we were doing that because we got some ways we want to do that. But you summarized it. You summarized it in a way that I thought was best so far. You remember what you said?
I mean, I think it was similar to what he said. What I said, which was.
So you can't remember what you said. In other words.
No, he said what I said. I said there was space to have the close, intimate time with your spouse and without giving away how it went down. Like you had that time, but in the same room you still had that community feeling. So you felt alone, like it was just you and your spouse, but you felt surrounded by love, and you knew you were surrounded by love. So that was my favorite part. I loved that.
Yeah, there was actually one of the voice messages that I got. Someone said that it was great to have a nice, intimate dinner with my spouse, but it was also good to be able to look around and see so many couples sharing that same moment. And they didn't feel like they were all by themselves.
Right.
And,
interacting, we could be talking, but then, somebody say a joke, and, we all kind of join in. And, it was fun. That made it fun and interactive.
And that's the culture or the ambiance we want to create. We want to be able to create a place where, you can still have the intimacy of a candlelight dinner, but at the same time, there is an interaction that takes place in a communal setting that can't be replaced.
Right.
Like it can't be replaced. Like Paul said, forsake not the assembling of yourselves together as the manner of some is. And then he talks about what happens in that assembling. Admonishment, encouragement, inspiration. All those things take place in that community, and people are inspired without you don't have to preach to get people inspired.
Right.
And, you don't have to stand up there and preach to, like folks do to inspire people. Just a visual of seeing couples loving each other, kissing each other, playing together, stuff that takes place in that atmosphere, is inspiring, is encouraging, right? And so we got a couple of voice messages that expressed that they were it was great to be able to be a part of a community of couples that are serious about marriage mastery, that's serious about having a faith-based marriage. Because I'm finding out that folks ain't serious about a faith-based marriage. Man. Folks don't. I'm talking about saved folks. They ain't really serious about their marriage being pleasing to God. You know, they've adopted this divorce culture way of being married. They're settling and suffering through a lot of things that God never intended for them to suffer through, and they're calling it marriage, but it's really not marriage. There's no oneness involved in it. You know, they're living their same life. They're living as if they were single. Like, that's not marriage. And so, I mean, you know, this sexless marriage stuff is going on now. Sleeping in separate bedrooms, and what they call it, love without affection. Like, what are we talking about? Like, that's what the divorce culture is propagating now. Like sexless marriage? Like what?
Right. Yeah.
What? What are we talking about?
I know you can't comprehend.
No, they playing games, man. They playing games, man. So to be able to address that and see that and really create a community where there's a strong connection between the married couples, but then also the individual couples. So, and then also one of my favorite parts was the communications game we played, and just seeing, like, I wish I had more time to elaborate on those who were successful in communicating to their spouse what they saw, and those who weren't, and why. Because it's indicative of what happens a lot of times when couples are at home in the privacy of the living room or the bedroom or the kitchen, and they're not on the same page, and there becomes this place for an argument when if you had these simple communication skills. I'm gonna say that again. They're skills, which means if something is a skill, it can be learned first. If it can be learned, it can be mastered. We can master the communication skills, right? Love comes with its own language, but there's a skill to communicating. And the number one skill that we talk about is fight to understand your spouse before you fight to be understood by your spouse. You fight to understand your spouse before you fight to be understood by your spouse. And the person who had the best drawing, because the nature of the game was to create a drawing of a picture that the husband communicated to the spouse without the wife seeing it, and the husband had to clearly communicate to his wife, and vice versa. We did both, but the one that was the best was a couple. And as I was walking around looking, I was seeing some folk. I just went on to the next table, right? Because they was just bad. Just listening to them, they was about to argue right there, right? but then when I get to this table, I'm like, wow, like, and I asked, how did y'all come up with that? And the wife said, because I asked questions, right? Basically, what she was doing, she was asking questions to get an understanding what was in his mind. Right? She wanted to know what was in his mind. And if she didn't think he was articulating it clearly to the point to where she can draw it out, she would then ask more questions. Right? So the lesson in that is husbands, don't be afraid or don't get nervous when your wife begins to ask you questions, because a lot of times she's just trying to understand what you're trying to communicate to her, and vice versa. Right? A wife can't get upset because a husband starts asking questions, because I'm very detail oriented, so I ask questions all the time, like what do you mean? Right. I want to know, what do you mean? Hey, what's up, fam? Today's Winners One podcast is brought to you by our Coffee in the Morning Club. Listen, they say right now the divorce rate is anywhere between 58 and 62%, depending on the community or the culture you grew up in. But they say that rate is drastically reduced if you are a couple who finds a community of like-minded couples. We have a Coffee in the Morning Club marriage enrichment community of couples who are driven to have a faith-based marriage. This is a marriage that's based upon the principles that God ordained for marriage to be about. If you want your marriage to be drastically reduced from running into chaos, confusion, and trouble, you need to join this community. It is our Coffee in the Morning Club community that will enrich you and empower you and strengthen you to win and make marriage easy. Explain it to me. I never forget this movie. Denzel Washington was in it. He said underlining theme, and it kept coming up in the movie, was explain it to me like I'm a 5-year-old. Like, make it as clear as, like, explain it to me like that clearly. And so a lot of times that's what goes into couples getting into arguments, is because they're fighting to be understood. You just don't understand me. You don't understand how I feel. Well, wait. If you fought that hard to understand me, and I fight that hard to understand you, there'll be no room. And this is how I said, there'll be no room for argument. There'll be no room, because remember, sin crouches at the door. Right. It's just waiting for a little crack. But when we in Buffalo now, so when right now we got snowing around, right? I got the folks they call weed man. I got the folk come around the house and they reseed the grass, right? When they come and reseed the grass, they do what they call it overseeding. Well, one day the folks was out there, and I'm like, man, why you put so much? It's just covered in seed. I mean, why you put so much seed out there? He says, I put so much seed out there so there won't be room for weeds to grow. Right? That's why they overseed. Because they want the grass to grow so tight that there's no room for weeds. That's how you eliminate weeds. Right? So here's a great segue. Oneness eliminates the weeds. It's so tight, the grass becomes one. It literally becomes one at the root. If you could, the way he explained it, if you could cut all the grass down just so you can see the roots, it'd look like one bed with no space in between. It looked like one bed. It looked like you unrolled a carpet and rolled it over the grass. That's how it would look. There's no room for the seeds to get in. See, we have so many couples, so many marriages where they're not overseeding culture of love. They don't have a culture of love that oversees or overlaps, each other. And so there's room, there's space for things to get in there, right? And so we have to, you have to be in a culture and a community that creates that, so that just there's no room. There's no room for arguing. There's no room for fussing. There's no room for, sexless marriage. There's no room for you sleeping in one room, me sleeping in another. There's no room. There's no room for, poor. There ain't no room for none of that stuff. I refuse to allow space for the enemy to come in there and create havoc.
Right. I talked to a paralegal this morning. I was driving Uber, and she deals specifically with divorces. And she said that most times it's people who are still dealing with childhood issues with their parents that causes them to not be able to deal with or, develop in the skills that, they need in order to have a successful marriage. And I'm only bringing this up because I think it's important for people to deal with that kind of stuff the right way. I know for myself in particular, that was one of the things that was getting in the way for me and creating a lot of emotional responses as opposed to, soulish responses and logical responses when it came to my husbandry and the way that I love Caitlin. And the second that I began to deal with that, it allowed the emotion to be in its right place so that I can begin to be who I'm supposed to be and love how I'm supposed to love. And I don't want that to get missed in people's pursuit of oneness. Whatever emotional responses that continue to come up, I think it's really important to take a look at that and say, where is this coming from? Like we have to have a certain level of objectivity about ourselves to say, where is this coming from? What's the root of this response? And really pray about it and say, Lord, like, reveal to me where.
Go ahead, finish.
Lord, where is this coming from?
Right.
And then put yourself in a position to deal with it so that you can get right.
Well, I think the challenge to what you just said, though, was having an individual having the objectivity and to be able to see themselves through an unbiased perspective. I would say for most,
that's gonna be tough.
I would say almost impossible. That's why you need a coach.
Yeah.
That's why you need a coach. That's why you need to call Coach D. That's why y'all need to connect this to
so
Coffee
you
in the
can
Morning.
be told.
So so you need somebody else. Yeah. So we was talking about this, right? The scripture says this. Paul was talking to the church at Corinth, and Paul was a simple dude, right? He says, I'm afraid for you. And they were dealing with a lot of issues, from marital issues to, sinful issues to doing communion wrong. It was raggedy. Church was raggedy. Right? It was just raggedy, right? And so Paul says, I'm afraid for you. At least the same way the serpent used subtlety to beguile Eve, you will also be removed from the simplicity that is in Christ Jesus. Like, marriage is simple.
Right.
It's simple to those who understand it. And we was talking on the service the other night, like you want to learn from people who simplify the thing. And I used a couple of people who I follow from a business perspective. Like, it's so simple. They've simplified it. We talk about an experience that I had, that after talking to a husband and he gave me what happened between him and his wife, and I gave him the solution. He's like, man, I love how he was saying it kind of in a sarcastic way. I love how you just make it sound so simple. Yeah, like as a coach, that's what I'm supposed to do.
Right.
I'm supposed to take that which is complicated and simplify it. Most folks want the complication.
Right.
I'm supposed to take that which you don't understand and give you understanding so that it's simple. This is how you solve this. That's why you need a coach. Most folks aren't at a level of understanding to where they can simplify a situation and a circumstance and be done with it. Right. I'll never forget, Leslie used to always say, I would see a situation, dissect it, and say, okay, we got a choice to make, either this or this. Why you always got to? Because that's what it is. Yeah. Like, let's get to the root. Let's simplify this thing so that we get an understanding, so we don't have to deal with this no more.
Right.
So we don't have to come back. We don't have to face this particular situation, right? How do we get to the point to where this thing is simple? Marriage is simple. We talked about it. We talked about the simplicity in marriage is that marriage is made for lovers.
But that's really the root of what people need to be focused on, right? People usually tend to want to deal with the fruit. They tend to want to deal with, communication or sex or money. Those are all fruits that come from oneness and having, the coaching and all that kind of stuff, and the skills and everything necessary to make marriage simple and easy, right? But I think when you're getting into, when you're going into marriage, people think compatibility. They think, me and this person laugh all the time. We have a good time. They think all these things that really have nothing to do with the root of the issue. They want to deal with the fruit, and it's wrong. It's upside down.
Right. In our conversation in the last 5 minutes, you mentioned oneness at least 3 times. You can listen to folks preach from the pulpit. You can listen to folks talk on Instagram. You can listen to folks talk on Clubhouse about marriage for an hour. They'll never mention oneness once. They'll never mention oneness once. They don't know what marriage is about. They'll never mention oneness once. And they call themselves giving you a solution. But if you don't know the end goal for marriage, then how are you going to give me a solution?
Right.
Because my solution got to be rooted in accomplishing the end goal. Little do they know, they're just further complicating the matter because they're just dealing with the fruit.
Right.
See, folks who just deal with the fruit are really bringing more complications than they are solutions. Because what they give you is not sustainable. Yep. I can give you tactics and strategies and keys and tricks and tips and all that stuff all I want. But if you don't identify as a lover, you're going to run out of gas.
Yeah.
Yep.
You're going to run out of gas.
That's like I'm a farmer and I'm trying to sell a store apples. So I'm going to go to somebody else's apple field and pick all the apples and bring them. But I don't got no trees of my own.
Right. You got trees of your own. Once he stopped making apples, you're done.
Right.
Right, because you're not tapped into the source. So but people don't understand it. We just run into anybody to get help, and that's the nature of it, right? People don't know what they don't know. But that's why, again, that's on us to put ourselves in a position where we're bringing an awareness to what it is God has given us as it relates to marriage, because this thing is simple, right? We're talking now about what marriage is. We wrote a book that I'm sure we're gonna get an advertisement in here at some point that's talking about what love is, because people need to know what love is.
Yeah.
Because I'm just to the point of no return when it comes to people talking about you need more than love to make marriage work. We just heard another brother say it the other day. Love is not enough. Love is not like I'm trying to reconcile that in my, like, if love was enough for God and his marriage, how is it not enough for our marriage?
They're saying God is not enough.
Well, they saying God is not enough. I know, but I'm trying to give them the benefit of the doubt, because they're good people. I'm trying to But you talking about love is not, like how? Like how? Like if love can't do it, what can? Yeah. It's the most powerful force in the universe. So we wrote a book called What Love Is, to give people a full, comprehensive revelation of what love is. And now we're talking about in our Coffee in the Morning Club what marriage is. This too will become another devotional, 31-day devotional, so that people can sit down daily and discover what marriage is from a faith-based perspective. And so we've been talking about this week about marriage, and this is probably one of the weightier matters as it goes into what marriage is. But we're talking about, first of all, marriage being a solution, right? Marriage is the solution for three things: man's need for companionship, because man needs to connect. The idea of companionship comes from the idea of something being common, or we having something in common, right? There's a connection based off the commonality that we have. There's a connection that can be created based off the commonality that we have. In this case, as man and woman, there's a connection that we can make. There's a companionship. There's a mutual energizing, a mutual loving, a mutual creating this connection that was built into being man, right? That's built into being man. One of the first books that I ever read when I got saved was by E.W. Kenyon. It was called A Father and His Family. And it was a love story between God and the church, and how he needed, or I should say his man, how he needed to have fellowship with man. God has a need. God has a need. That need is to love.
Right.
Hey, what's up? Coach D here. Listen, I got something I need to say to you real quick. Listen, marriage is made for lovers. Now, once you understand that marriage is made for lovers, and you're not listening to them folks that keep saying you need more than love to make marriage work, you have to identify as a lover. Once you identify as a lover, now you got to learn what love is. Guess what? We have something for you that can help you understand exactly what love is in its most comprehensive nature. It's so much more than just an emotion. But you got to get the book to find out exactly what God's intent was for love and how it functions. Thanks. Get the book. God bless. So God has a need for loving. He created man with that same need. So marriage is the solution for man's capacity to function at his most powerful state. Like there's no other relationship where man can fully express the totality of loving than a marriage between the husband and there's no greater. There's no greater. So marriage is God's solution for man's companionship and his need to love at the highest level, to be at his most powerful state. So the first aspect of love being a solution is that it solves the problem of companionship and loving at the highest level. And then we're in the midst of talking about now marriage is about the new man, which is one of our most weightier sides of talking about marriage, because you're talking about the amalgamation of two personalities, two belief structures, two psychologies, two emotional states, two desires, becoming one. Like you're talking about bringing the gift set. You're talking about bringing the natural abilities. You're talking about bringing the acquired skills. You're talking about bringing the spirituality. You're talking about bringing the intellectual prowess. You're talking about bringing those two minds and becoming one. You're talking about multiplying the force of faith and the power of the soul and the power of the spirit. You're talking about bringing all that together for a specific power and purpose. Like, it's about the new man, right? And so we've been talking about the depth of that and the intensity of that and the power of that, right? A degree of conversation that most folks don't tap into, don't even think about when it comes to marriage. But when you really get down to the purpose of marriage and what God intended for marriage, like God intended for your marriage to not just impact your life, but to impact your children's life. Like God expects you to leave a legacy of loving, wisdom, and finances for your family. Right. Like he expects your son to watch you love your wife, to love his mother, and then he in turn duplicates that to his spouse. And you perpetuate that for generations to come. Like, it's so, like, what God intended for marriage to impact not just your household, but your community, your society, your state, your country. Like, marriage is the epicenter of by which society was designed to function and operate.
Right. Marriage is an engine, right? But the one new man is the turbo.
Exactly. That's a great way to say it.
You're adding horsepower. You're adding power in general.
Right.
To make that thing function at a completely different level than it ever has. Right.
Right. That new man. See, we get our picture of that from the marriage between Christ and the church. Once we are translated from Adam to Christ, if any man be in Christ, it's a new creature. The marriage between Christ and the church was about the new man. It's about getting him I gotta get them out of Adam into Christ. I gotta get them into this new man. If I can just get them in this new man, and now here's the scary part of that new man. Before Jesus took us out of Adam into Christ and translated into this new man, he demonstrated the new man. He was the living demonstration of how the new man functions, how the new man thinks, how the new man behaves, how the new man talks, how the new man loves. How the new man shows good. He was the demonstration of the new man. And you want to talk about like how important your marriage is? Like your marriage to function in that capacity to where I can initially be that to my children, and then whoever comes into my sphere of influence can feel the effects of this new man.
Can we just go back to Jesus being the example? Like that took me somewhere. Yeah. Like, people are really out here thinking that marriage is this ambiguous, this big cloud that you enter into and you just kind of figure your way out through it together. We're going to do it together, baby. You hold hands and you just work through whatever issues you come through, but we're going to get through this thing. You got a blueprint.
We got a blueprint. We got a blueprint. We just ain't never seen it. Folks ain't talk to us about it. We got a blueprint. Yeah. We follow the world's blueprint. We follow the divorce culture's blueprint. If you didn't go to, the world's, what major in whatever the world tell you to major in, what is it called, family and marital counseling, or whatever. But all that stuff is it's fallen man based and unrenewed mind based. It's all based off of the function of the fallen man. Different from believers. Now I get the folks that's outside of Christ, but folks that's in Christ, that's like worshiping God and loving the Lord, they should be banging down our doors to find out about this stuff. Yeah. Right? We're talking about faith based, like it's got to be rooted and grounded in the tenets of our faith. Right. And if Jesus isn't your model, if God isn't we run out of time too. We
He telling us like we almost about to go over.
Are you telling yourself that?
Yeah. Right. We brought out in our Coffee in the Morning Club that God referred to himself as a husband to Israel. And in Hosea chapter 4 verse 12 it says this. He says when God gave Hosea a message when he wanted Hosea to go out and bring Israel out from their whoredoms, he said this is what I'm going to do. He says I'm going to allure them out into the wilderness. And I'm going to speak comfortably to them. Like he was saying, Jose, I'm going to go rescue them. I'm going to draw them out of whatever mess they're in, and I'm going to speak comfortably to her. The idea of speaking comfortably to her is to speak face to face, eyeball to eyeball, heart to heart. Like, it's to get you to understand how much I love you to the point to where you become tenderly devoted to me and you want to help solve all of my problems. That's how a husband is supposed to allure his wife into the secret chamber and then talk to her in a comfortable manner to where she recognizes the goodness and the love and the life that this husband wants to bring to her. Why wouldn't she submit to that? Because we're not speaking comfortably to her. But God is our example.
Right.
He's our example. The word says it was the goodness of the Lord that leaded Israel to repentance, that leaded men to repentance. Most husbands are trying to get their wives, or most wives are trying to get their husbands to change without goodness. They're trying to get them to change through fussing and fighting and complaining. You know what that causes a husband to go do? They go find the furthest place in the house they can. And they hide there.
And stay there, and they call it a man cave.
They call it a man cave now, but the Bible calls, they says it's better to live on the rooftop than with a brawling and contentious woman. Like, they go find the furthest place away from them house they can. Like, we call it man caves now. But in the Bible, they calls it the pinnacle at the top of the roof, right? It's like I got to go somewhere, right? So the point is, we have to get back to what God's intent for marriage was. Mm-hmm. And I don't know no better place to do it than here with the gospel love.
Right.
The good news of love in marriage.
That's it. So, if you want to continue this conversation, make sure you click the link below. Join our Coffee in the Morning Club, where we have these discussions.
What they really need to join is our Marriage Master University.
Oh, that too.
They really need to get in our Marriage Master University.
Right, that's true.
If you get in our Marriage Master University, like, you talking about sowing a little bit, investing a little bit up front for a lifetime of liberty and freedom and peace. But anyway, we'll talk about that.
Links to that will be coming soon.
Yeah.
Until then, any closing thoughts or anything like that? No? All right.
You asking me?
No, never mind. Because we'll be here for another hour. Until next time, we will see you. And, all the links are below. See you next week.